So, there's this idea that comes up a lot, this phrase, the immigrant hustle. It
Hmm.
sounds like this incredible drive, a willingness to do, well, whatever it takes, they say.
Yeah, it's a really powerful image. And the numbers kind of back it up, don't they?
They really do. We were looking at some sources.
Yeah.
Immigrants being, what, 3 or 4 times more likely to become millionaires compared to people born here?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that figure about founders, 40% of the biggest U.S. companies started by immigrants or their kids.
Yeah.
That's huge.
It really is. It makes you stop and think, okay, what is going on there? What's behind that?
Well, we've got some really interesting material here, articles, stories, things a listener actually shared with us that helps us unpack it a bit.
Good. So let's get into it. What do these sources say is the core of this hustle everyone talks about?
A lot of it seems to boil down to doing the stuff others refuse to do. That phrase comes up.
Refuse to do. What did.
Like working crazy long hours, juggling multiple jobs,
Yeah.
showing up no matter what, even if you're sick, not complaining, or at least that's the perception.
Right.
One source even mentioned comments about immigrants taking on really physically tough jobs, picking fruit, cleaning rooms, the kind of work maybe others avoid.
Okay, so the tough stuff. And it's not just about, getting ahead in a career, is it? The sources suggest something deeper.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's often rooted in just plain necessity. Survival, really.
Survival.
Yeah, think about it. You land in a new place. Maybe you don't have much. You're figuring everything out from scratch.
And often supporting family back home, too.
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge
Yeah.
driver. Sending money back is,
Yeah.
well, it's crucial. We saw this story about a caller, Max, from Siberia.
Yeah.
He talked about sending money home every single month.
Yeah.
Just matter of fact, oh, yeah, absolutely. Full of energy about it.
Yeah.
It wasn't even a question.
Wow. That responsibility, that connection back home,
Uh,
it adds a whole other layer of pressure, but maybe purpose, too.
for sure. And that intensity, that drive,
Yeah.
it seems to lead to those results we mentioned, right? The millionaires, the company founders.
Yeah, it connects.
It seems like that relentless work ethic combined with that underlying need is a really potent mix.
There was that story about the founder of Zoom, Eric Yuan.
Right. From Forbes. He applied for a U.S. visa, what was it, 9 times, got denied 8 times,
Time.
and finally got it on the 9th try. I mean, talk about persistence.
Yeah,
That really sums up that
that's
whatever
great.
it takes idea.
That is incredible determination. And Max, the caller from Siberia, he had a pretty direct take on why he thought immigrants succeed like that.
He did, yeah.
Oh.
Pretty blunt. He basically said Americans are easy to outwork.
Oh.
Because immigrants, he said, are hungrier, fighting for every penny, not taking anything for granted. He even used this phrase, I wipe my feet on Americans when it comes to hustle.
Okay, that's intense. Obviously, just one person's view from the source material.
Exactly. Just one perspective shared in one source. But it definitely points to this idea of different levels of drive based on different life experiences, different stakes.
Yeah, the stakes feeling fundamentally different. And people immigrate for other reasons too, right? Not just pure necessity. The sources mention things like
Better jobs, better
Okay,
salaries, yeah.
Wow.
Education opportunities, sometimes just wanting a totally new experience, or maybe proving you can make it somewhere else.
So it's a mix of things pushing people away from home and pulling them towards something new.
Seems like it. It's this powerful blend. So the hustle is real, often born from need. But it feels like it's just one piece of a bigger picture, right? This broader immigrant mindset.
Okay, so beyond just the hard work, what other characteristics did the sources point to?
Well, looking across the board, especially in this really detailed NHS report, that's the UK's health service, other themes really jump out. Resilience and bravery is a big one.
Makes sense.
I mean, imagine starting your whole life over. Maybe more than once. Facing all that uncertainty, hardship, maybe even trauma you've been through.
Yeah?
Someone in that NHS source said, and this really stuck with me, I feel I've restarted my life for the 3rd time. Just, wow. Dealing with setbacks constantly, that builds serious resilience and bravery just to keep facing it.
Just surviving that experience feels like developing a whole new skill set.
Totally. And right alongside that is adaptability. You have to adapt. New culture, new rules at work, new everything.
Constantly learning.
Constantly. The NHS source had this advice. Observe, learn to get credibility. Growth comes from letting go. It highlights needing to be flexible, to pivot, to figure out how to fit in and thrive in different places.
So it's not just brute force pushing through, it's also being smart, being observant, learning to navigate. What about creating chances?
Yeah, that leads to resourcefulness. Often you're starting with, Not many traditional resources, money, connections,
Yeah.
whatever. So you got to get creative.
Make something out of nothing almost.
Exactly. It drives innovation. Someone said, I see something positive in every opportunity, and we'll use it as a stepping stone. Another person, reflecting on tough times, said something like, when you've lived under economic blockade, you always think of new ways around problems. What can we actually do with what we have?
Finding those alternative routes. Thinking differently.
Yeah, thinking outside the box, because you have to.
That definitely connects to that entrepreneurial thing we saw in the stats.
Totally, that entrepreneurial spirit is key.
Hmm.
But it's not just about individual grit either. The source is really stressed networking and community building.
Oh, right. Leaning on each other.
Definitely. Those strong communities, they provide support, advice, maybe job leads, vital stuff. There was that line, home is people, not necessarily the geographical location.
Yeah.
That really hit home, Building those relationships is crucial when you're building a new life.
That makes so much sense, finding your people who get it. And was there something about looking ahead, a future focus?
Yeah, a strong long-term vision. Often, the focus is really on, future stability. Not just for yourself, but really importantly for your family.
Building something for the next generation.
Exactly. Being a role model. Planning for success that lasts. Someone in a source asked, it is important to always have a job. What are the job requirements for the future? Can I prepare for this now? It's about security, building something solid.
Okay, so putting it all together, it's this intense mix of immediate need, relentless work, learned resilience, being adaptable, resourceful, relying on community, and having this strong future focus. It sounds incredibly powerful.
It is. It paints a picture of amazing strength and capability.
Mm.
But this is where the sources kind of pivot. They start talking about the flip side.
The flip side.
Yeah, that while this hustle is so important for survival, for success, that constant pushing can come at a real cost. A dark side, some sources called it.
Okay. What does that look like? What's the cost?
Sources like these articles from Parents and Culturally Enough really got into this. They talk about how this intense hustle culture can get deeply ingrained, passed down through family.
Ingrained how?
Well, it often comes from those original experiences of, displacement, poverty, trauma maybe.
Mm.
The sheer struggle of trying to make it in a place that wasn't always welcoming.
So it starts as a strategy to survive, but then it becomes just how you operate, almost part of your identity.
Exactly. And that takes a toll. You see things like chronic burnout, emotional, physical,
Hmm.
invisible trauma that people carry. And this deep-seated belief that you have to always be pushing, that rest is lazy or you haven't earned it.
Oh, wow.
Your self-worth gets tangled up with how much you're doing, how much you're enduring. The Parents article had some really personal stories.
Yeah.
A first-gen lawyer whose single immigrant mom just had to hustle, no choice.
Hmm.
A writer whose Cuban dad worked 3 jobs. A mom who even now feels this constant pressure that there's always more she should be doing.
God, that sounds exhausting, like a weight you can't put down, even when things maybe aren't so desperate anymore.
It really does. And that Culturally Enough source,
Yeah.
it had this really interesting challenge to the whole idea of resilient.
Challenged at how? We usually see resilience as purely positive.
Right. But they argue that for many, it's not just a good trait, it's a necessity born from harm. It masks systemic problems. And this kind of survival mode resilience, it can lead to things like bottling up emotions, feeling like you can't ask for help, that hyper-independence thing, normalizing burnout, feeling guilty if you try to rest, struggling to set boundaries because you're so used to just pushing through.
That's a powerful reframe. Resilience as maybe a sign of having endured too much, not just being strong. And they mentioned inherited debt.
Yeah, that feeling. Some adult children of immigrants have this intense pressure to succeed, to make their parents' sacrifices worthwhile. It adds this whole other layer of burden.
It really does. And it makes you ask, why does that survival mode stick around? Even when maybe the immediate crisis is over, why does that cycle continue?
That's the really tough question, isn't it?
What?
It's like the survival mechanism just became the default setting, hardwired in.
And trying to change that, trying to redefine success, that feels deeply tied up with identity, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The stories in that Threads of Resilience source really highlighted that connection. They showed this complex duality,
Duality how?
like embracing the opportunities you have in your new home, but also feeling this deep responsibility to advocate, to fight for a better future, often because of what your family went through.
Can you give an example from those stories?
Sure. There was Sam fighting for civil rights, saying it was directly inspired by grandparents who survived the Holocaust. Or Nazreen, loving her life here but feeling she has to speak out against policies affecting her family's homeland.
Wow. Balancing those worlds.
Yeah. Or Emmeline, consciously working to balance her Colombian heritage with her American identity. Rachel, who came from Honduras, became a citizen, and now feels she needs to work for change for others coming after her.
It's carrying that history forward.
Definitely. Oprah talked about using radical imagination to picture a better, more equitable world, a vision shaped by her own journey. Tanya drew strength from her Salvadorian mom, believing she could overcome anything because her mom did. Esteban, first-gen Mexican-American, felt driven to help others, fueled by his parents' strength and contributions.
These stories really show it's not just about the work grind. It's about weaving together all these different threads of who you are, your history, your hopes.
Exactly. And that idea of finding your community, your people,
Yeah.
it keeps coming back, like that honest people idea. It seems fundamental.
Building a full life, not just surviving, navigating all those layers.
Yeah. Culture, history, personal dreams. It's a lot.
Okay, so let's try and pull this together. We've seen this incredible drive, the success it can bring, this whole immigrant mindset. But we've also seen the potential costs, the burnout, the pressure. What does this mean for how we should think about hustle and resilience now?
Well, the sources, especially culturally enough, and parents, they really push towards redefining those terms. They argue that real strength isn't only about pushing through endlessly.
What else is it then?
It's also about knowing your limits, knowing when to stop, when to rest, being able to ask for support, honoring that you're human.
That feels almost countercultural to the hustle narrative we started with.
It totally can,
Yeah.
especially if that drive was literally about survival for you or your family, or if it's just deeply ingrained. The sources point out that valuing rest, prioritizing your emotional health, it can feel like a luxury, like something you haven't earned or don't deserve if you're not constantly producing.
But that constant grind, it's not sustainable in the long run, is it?
It just isn't. Not without paying a price, usually. So unlearning that survival-based resilience, it's about shifting towards, well, a more sustainable way of living, trusting yourself more, instead of always overriding your needs.
How do you even start doing that?
Some sources suggested practical things, like consciously taking time to reflect, maybe doing an exercise like a values pie chart, seeing where your time actually goes versus where you want it to go. Basically, taking charge of defining what balance means for you instead of just reacting or waiting to hit a wall.
Finding a healthier balance, acknowledging that well-being is actually part of success, not separate from it.
Exactly. Redefining resilience isn't about becoming weak or lazy. It's about recognizing that true strength includes vulnerability. It includes resting and recharging. It includes leaning on your community. Success isn't just about what you achieve on the outside or how hard you worked. It's also about how you take care of yourself along the way.
Building a life where you can actually thrive, not just endure,
Right.
sustainably.
For the long haul.
Wow. This has been a really rich exploration. We've seen the immigrant mindset from so many angles, the incredible drive, the success, the innovation, but also the hidden costs, the burnout, the trauma, and how it all ties into identity, community, belonging.
Yeah, it really highlights that duality, seizing opportunities while often feeling a pull towards your roots, towards advocating for something more.
So maybe a final thought for you listening. Think about how you define hustle in your own life. Is it all push, push, push? Or does your definition make space for pausing, for rest, for asking for help, for respecting your own limits?
What does it really mean to build a life, not just survive day to day? And how could valuing rest, valuing your own well-being, actually contribute to a deeper, more sustainable kind of success? Not just for you, but maybe for your family, your community too.
Yeah, thinking about that balance, that really crucial balance between doing whatever it takes and knowing when enough is truly enough.